I'm excited about this week's project. It's a lidded box, but it's made from a Maple Root Burl, which is probably one of the prettiest woods I've ever turned. It's also got a Walnut Finial on it. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think, whether or not it's a right size, right fit for this project. I'm excited about this week's project. I'm excited because I have this piece of wood. It is a Maple Root Burl. It was not below the ground, it was just at the root, just sitting above the ground. But I was fortunate to be given this piece, and it is a beautiful piece of wood. Beautiful coloring. I think there's a lot of beautiful markings in it. It's already very dry, so that's good. I won't have to worry about any cracking. I don't know that it has a lot of bark inclusions, and what little is there will probably get turned away. The problem is, what do I do with it? It's not overly big, 7 inches square, almost 7 inches cubed. It's a little taller than it is wide. Not really bowl material. I debated I could cut it in half this way here and get two very shallow, plates. Or I could do one bowl like this, but it would be quite small. So I'm going to do something different with it. I'm going to make a lidded vessel. Again, not something I usually do, but it's not a big piece of wood. And I do want to show the beauty of the wood off, so I think this will be the best fit for it. So we'll get it mounted up between centers and get it round. That will be the first step. I like to just take a Forstner bit and drill just a little hole here. It creates a lip for my stem center to sit into. Sometimes with just the tip, it can kind of skirt off to the side, but now not only do you have the tip driving into that center hole, but you've got a lip around here which will hold that steady. So just a little tip. So here the project is mounted between centers, and I'm just getting it round. So I'm not making much contact, so it is a little rough, but you'll notice that I'm using my roughing gouge, which is bigger and heavier than my normal bowl gouge, and that can take the beating that often occurs when you're just starting out and the piece is not round. As I get smoother and it gets more round, then I'll be able to switch to my traditional bowl gouge. As you get it round, you can bring speed up. I started out pretty good, 500 RPM. I'm now up to 650. But notice the cut. Before, it was just hitting on maybe 2 corners at a time, like the high spots here, and then not again till here. So I wasn't removing a lot of material. Take a look at it now and see how much material is coming off. If you look down near the bottom on my sleeve, you'll see the size of shavings that are coming off. It's cutting pretty well. And at this point, I'm able to switch back to my traditional bowl gouge. That will remove material almost as quickly as my roughing gouge, but it does give me a much better surface. So I do like to use that as quickly as possible. Now, just watching it here on the screen, you would think it's not round. It is, but what's throwing you off is the top surface and bottom surface are not flat. So I'll just use my carbide tool here and work the top and the bottom to flatten those out. The other thing I'm doing here now on the bottom is I'm starting to form a tenon. So I'll just shape that down and cut my tenon out. Eventually I'll flip it over so that I can finish the details on my tenon. So I've already got it close to the diameter that I need, and now I just got to flatten that out and take off this piece here that is not going to be part of the final tenon. The other thing is I do take and make a little bit of a dovetail so that that will fit better in my chuck, and I can tighten it up and it'll hold much better with a bit of a dovetail. As usual, I do keep my tailstock engaged, especially in the beginning where it's still turning a lot of weight. I haven't hollowed the inside out yet, so I do want to keep my tailstock engaged as long as possible. It's round at this point, so here you can see I'm just using my bowl gouge, and you can see the very fine hair-like shavings that are coming off, because at this point I'm not really interested in changing the shape as much as I am in getting a nice smooth finish. If you watch my channel, you would have seen this before, but now I'm just using my negative rake scraper. Again, not so much interested in changing the shape of the vessel, but just getting a nice smooth finish. The more time you can spend with the tool in getting a nice smooth surface, the less time you have to spend sanding. And I do not like sanding. So here I'm just working on a second tenon. I'm going to part off the top of this piece to make the lid, so I need a tenon on the top to be able to hold it as well. I don't normally do this. Normally when I turn a bowl, I just have one tenon on the bottom, which you see there. But because I'm parting this piece off, I'm going to want some way to hold the lid. So that's why I put a tenon on there. Now, it's not going to be very heavy, so I don't need a very deep tenon. It can be quite shallow. So the first thing I do is I use my parting tool to make a parting cut, again, to remove the piece off the top, which is going to be the lid. I didn't go all the way through. The parting tool was starting to bind up, so I just finished it off with my handsaw. And you can see here there was a bit of burning. Again, my parting tool was binding a little bit. Sorry, I do have some footage missing here. Just the beginning of the hollowing of the inside of the lidded box. But this is not any different than what you've seen me do before. Basically, at this point, it's very much like turning the inside of a bowl. It's just the edges are very, very straight. This wood is very, very hard, but it is dry, and it is cutting fairly well, as you can see the shavings coming off there. Now, just to finish the final cuts, I was getting a bit of a wave on the inside, so I switched over to my hollowing jig, which gives me a little more control, especially going down the straight sides of this vessel. I do not have my laser pointer installed, because I don't need it. I'm not removing a lot of material. I'm just taking very light passes just to remove any waves that exist on the wall now. The next step is I'm just cutting a recess in the top, and that's going to be a recess that's going to hold my lid. So I'm just using my carbide tool to get it started. It's easier using the carbide tool because I can push straight in and maintain a nice crisp edge. Now I'm working on the top itself. So again, I mentioned that I had made that small tenon, and that's what's mounted in my chuck. And now I'm just smoothing out what will be the inside of the top lid. It's going to be flat. There's not going to be any details here. The lid is going to be flat on the underside. There was a slight taper to the top and a bit of a concave surface on the underside, but again, it's flat. I just test it every once in a while to make sure it's the right size. I do have to reduce the diameter, but I do not want to reduce it any smaller than I have to because I want the lid to be a nice snug fit. I think I mentioned earlier that this was the inside of the lid. It actually is not. It's the top. The inside is where the tenon is. I do apologize for that. It's now shaped, a slight convex surface. And now the next step is I am going to put a finial on this. So I have to drill a hole in the center. Now this hole is not going to be very large nor very deep. I'm just using a drill bit, which I can hold in my hands, and I'm just going to make a small hole here, probably less than 1/8 of an inch deep. I'm using walnut here for my finial. It's not going to be very big. I just used a walnut board that I had, which is 3/4 of an inch. So I just squared it up and made a 3/4 inch square stock. And now I'm just using my bowl gouge, and I'll also use my carbide tool to make a small knob like finial. Quite often finials will have a lot of fancy detail and be more like a icicle look, but in this case I wanted to keep it simple. I just wanted a small knob. I didn't want to take away from the wood itself, but just enough to with the walnut to draw a little bit of an accent to the piece. Leave a comment, let me know what you think, if I made the right decision. I know there's lots of other turners that watch my channel, and you're probably screaming at your screen now saying, why am I not using my skew chisel? I'm not real experienced with my skew chisel. I'm just more comfortable with the bowl gouge, and for the detail that I'm putting on this finial, I can get that with a combination of my gouge and my carbide tool. Again, if you watch my channel, I thank you for that. You've seen me do this before. I'm just removing the tenon off the bottom of the piece. In this case, I did use my cold jaw chucks just because I had them available and it was easier. A lot of times I can't because the rim is not solid. With this piece it was, so I was able to use my cold jaw chucks. And I'm also limited to 10 inches on this. Here's the finished piece. I'm very pleased with the way it turned out. You can see the lid here. It is a nice snug fit, and you can also see the finial on top, which is really the handle to remove this lid. The other thing you'll notice is up in about the 11 o'clock position, this lid did have a bark inclusion in it, and that ends up being a hole that passes all the way through the cover. It is a nice little feature. I did not bother filling it. I just left it open as a hole. I think I mentioned this, but this is probably one of the most beautiful pieces of wood I've worked with. A root burl, you'll see these black dots here in them. It's typically only found in a root burl, is the only time you see this. It does have the grain pattern that you normally see in a burl, but these eyes are unique to a root burl. It's also got some bird's eye in it. It's got some beautiful grain pattern as well as some chatoyance. Here's the finished product looking down at the top. Again, let me know what you think. Leave a comment and let me know if you think the finial is large enough or whether it's too small. I tend to like it. I think it just is the right fit for this size of a product. Here again is that bark inclusion that I mentioned, and you can see that it passes all the way through the cover. Here you can see the lip that holds the cover on so that it doesn't fall down inside the bowl. That grain pattern that you saw on the outside continues into the bowl, and there are a couple bark inclusions that you can see on the inside that are not visible on the outside. Again, overall, I think it's a project that turned out very well, and it's probably one of the most beautiful pieces of wood that I've worked with. Leave a comment, let me know what you think.